This week on Next in Marketing, I spoke to Cara Pratt. She's the SVP of Kroger Precision Marketing. We talked about how the company is looking to differentiate in the exploding retail media category through partnerships with Roku, Pinterest, and Pandora. Cara also talked about the company's push into private data marketplaces and how the grocer has already been able to deliver 500 billion personalized experiences to shoppers. Let's get started.
Everything we know about the media, marketing, and advertising business is being completely upended thanks to technology and data. We're talking with some of the top industry leaders as they steer their companies through constant change. Welcome to Next in Marketing, presented by AppsFlyer.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Next in Marketing. My guest this week is Cara Pratt. She's the Senior Vice President of Kroger Precision Marketing. Welcome, Cara. How are you?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have you because it's a fascinating time in your space that was not even really an industry seemingly a couple of years ago. And I'm talking about retail media, which has just exploded in the last couple of years. And every forecaster is upping their numbers for 2021 and 2022. So their timing is great. Tell us about, I know Kroger because I went to school in the Midwest. Not everybody in New York probably knows the company that well. Can you give us like the overview of Kroger's footprint and then I want to get into how the process of getting into the advertising business was?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Kroger is America's grocer. We're in 35 states across the country, number 1 or 2 share in each of those states. Not just under the Kroger banner, but through different acquisitions over the years. You head out to California and Ralph's is owned by the Kroger company.
Mm-hmm.
In Colorado, it's, King Soopers and City Market, Fry's in Arizona. So lots of different banners sit under the Kroger halo. But a massive retailer in the U.S. That's been around for over 130 years. And not only is it core brick and mortar, but there's different businesses that Kroger drives as well. Murray's Cheese, which many folks in New York do know,
Sure.
That's owned by the Kroger company. Home Chef, which is a leading meal kit solution provider, owned by the Kroger company. Vitacost, so many folks are going to Vitacost.com to order different vitamins and supplements, owned by the Kroger company. So lots of different entities, but truly America's grocer and the number 1 grocer in the U.S. and a Fortune 17 company. So we're thrilled about the opportunity that we have within the retail media business to leverage that rich asset and customer trust and to make brand advertising work harder, which is what our focus has been for the last few years.
What I remember about Kroger and supermarkets in the Midwest when I got to school was that you could buy booze in the supermarket, which I thought was wild at the time because you can't do that in New York. It's separate liquor stores, which was very exciting, even though I was underage for most of this time.
Not in every state, but
no.
But yeah, many states that we operate in. Yeah.
Okay, so before I get into the advertising story, how long you mentioned how Kroger's been around forever? It's a huge footprint. How long have you guys been serious in the e-commerce space? Did the pandemic kick that into another gear? Was something you've been building for a long time? Where has that been the last couple of years?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the pandemic certainly accelerated customer engagement within digital properties and shopping online and picking up in store or having direct home delivery in grocery. But it certainly didn't start through the pandemic. Kroger had been preparing for this for many years. And now, north of 90% of our customer base, which obviously is a great reach across the United States, has access to engage with our digital assets, whether they're, again, shopping online and driving to the store for it loaded in the back of their car, or they want things delivered directly to their homes. And that all really was kind of anchored future forward investment choices, operational planning and coordination years ahead of the pandemic. And so, we're pleased with the opportunity that we had to deliver to our customers across the country when they needed us most. And obviously now we've got an accelerated engagement and interest as customers realize that it's not so bad to have somebody else do their grocery shopping for them.
Yes, once you try it, it's really hard to go back. It's very true. Okay, so a pandemic accelerated your e-commerce business like it did for many companies in your space and anybody in retail, really. When do you stay? Because I wonder. Okay, so there's like all these companies like Kroger and Instacart and CVS and Walgreens are all in the advertising business in a relatively short period of time. how hard is it to get into? Is it literally like, you make a deal and put some code on your site and you're off to the races? Is it elaborate process to get into advertising and do it right? Like, can you tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, I'll certainly share. It's not sudden, the purposeful planning, not just strategically on the investment choices that you want to make on behalf of a company and create the right experiences for advertisers and shoppers, but really making sure you have the right technical foundation that underpins. And so we think about the tech infrastructure, the scalable systems, the clean, organized data to unleash science. I mean, that's really a magnificent asset that we have, where 96% of our transactions are tethered to a loyalty card. We can longitudinally watch people's behavior change over time. The intelligence we have both on actual transaction data as well as derived data, and being able to leverage that. Our data scientists can leverage that intelligence to predict audience recommendations and optimize for audiences, and then close the loop for measurement is critical. But that takes a lot of planning and a lot of investment within that tech infrastructure. Then you lock in on operations, the right business processes, the right ways of working, the right business logic on when we want to kind of throttle on and off on our owned properties, any advertising opportunities for brands. And finally, of course, talent. Domain expertise across functions, not just a selling org, but product and engineering and data science and media operations and campaign operations and ad ops. All of those really need to come together. So it's not as easy as a quick spin up, but it's certainly really powerful when you get it right. And of course, we're leaning on the backbones of incredible trust within our consumer base, incredible data asset. The pandemic acceleration, Kroger is the only grocer in the top 10 e-com players in the U.S., was fourth fastest growing last year. And so a lot of opportunity ahead. And most importantly, it's good for consumers and it's good for brands. And that's really what we're focused on.
So, okay, there's a lot there I want to unpack, but when you talk about the people don't think about, I think people sometimes assume it's like just adding AdSense ads to your site. You just do it and it's automatic. You got to hire a bunch of people. You got to build teams. You got to find experts. Does Kroger Precision Marketing encompass all of the people that work in your advertising business? Is that also the loyalty card division? Like, tell us how that looks.
We do. So Kroger Precision Marketing sits within 8451. 8451 is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Kroger company.
Okay.
And think of 8451 as the analytics and activation engine of the Kroger company. And so again, we've got incredible tech teams across product engineering, data science, leveraging, kind of enabling our data scientists to leverage that rich customer intelligence to create the right recommendations for our advertising assets. The advertising business is not just on O&O and search and kind of traditional display. We have that capability, and of course there is interest from particularly e-commerce teams as on the lower funnel, more performant nature of advertising choices. But we also have the opportunity in an appropriate kind of privacy compliant way to create access to our audiences off property as well, in the programmatic space, as well as through some direct relationships with the likes of Pinterest and Pandora and Facebook and others. And so one of the big announcements that we've had this year was just about 6 weeks ago when we announced at Advertising Week our private marketplace, where media ad buyers and agencies or direct for some of the mature CPGs that want their own team's hands-on keys. They can gain access to through deal IDs to anonymize data to then deploy within their own restrictions that they have within their brand advertising assets. Again, in a privacy compliant, productive way for them to frequency cap and measure the performance of their media. So. The media business for maturing retail media players, and I say that because we're all pretty young at this. It's a new industry. It really does go well beyond kind of the traditional O&O search and display. You can create targeted offers to incentivize trial. You can kind of inspire through different social handles. You can, through us, connect with folks through Roku's assets as well, right? And it's all around pre-optimized upfront audiences as well as measuring the performant nature of media.
Okay, you're jumping ahead of a lot of my questions. I want to come back to private marketplaces. I want to come back to some of these other partnerships. You said something interesting before. I think you said 96% of your customers are loyalty card users. I would have guessed that and this is probably me stereotyping generationally. Like I think the e-commerce crowd is younger and they don't come in the store that much. So they don't have loyalty cards, and the loyalty card people are traditional shoppers, so to speak. But that obviously that seems like that's not the case. So what does the demographic look like? Is that changing? And then I'm curious how many of your advertisers look to drive in store versus activity on the site with that loyalty card connection.
Yeah, great questions. Listen, with 96% coverage of transactions, obviously we've got a very wide swath across all demos that are engaging within our asset. I think it's really important to think about the value exchange that our customers get within the Kroger family. And so our customers know when they use that card, there's deals that they get from a price value equation. They can earn fuel points, to leverage at many of the different gas stations across the country
right now.
we have. Absolutely. And there's just personalized experiences, personalized offers that can sit within their digital wallet or can get mailed to them if their dominant choice and preference continues to be paper offers, whatever it may be. So that really that value exchange is what's most critical for us to create that connection and continue to engage across all demographics with the loyalty card. And obviously, when folks are engaged on our owned and operated properties, they're opted in there, so we can create and fulfill that experience for them. So that's a bit of the highlight reel for overall engagement. In the e-com space, we've got engagement across all demographics as well. And that's been really fantastic to see the kind of adoption that sits across all different demos for those experiences. It really just speaks to customers' expectations have evolved, and again, the pandemic has transformed some folks in thinking differently and engaging differently, forever, and it's caused other people to tap in earlier than they may have previously, and they like that experience. I think your second question, Mike, was tagged more to advertiser and advertiser interest. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many I believe most advertisers in retail media are trying to drive purchases or interest on the owned and operated properties. But I wonder how many brands are trying to tie together advertising on your properties and other places and their loyalty cards.
Yeah.
And maybe that's all over the place. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I spoke a little bit about how the full funnel ecosystem of advertising assets that we have, right? Whether it's programmatically buying or anything in social properties off our own app or website experience or email kind of activation. The vast majority of our campaigns are multi-channel. And mixing across, our O&O and our offsite properties. The performant nature, once you can hit people multiple times with a message and be really precise with the right message. And again, we've got this unique ability to carve out a single brand may have multiple creative assets that are getting fueled for different audiences based on their behavior. And that's really the power of this first-party data to create a more engaging connection point and then use a wide swath across what the funnel has been, although we're constantly seeing it look more like a pipe because you can be more prescriptive across all those different touch points with who you want to communicate with and what you want to say to entice and engage and inspire. So again, the majority of our investment choices really are running through for brands, tapping into all different parts of that funnel.
Interesting. I want to come back to how brands are doing the multi-platform marketing with you guys, but just take a step back. When you get into the advertising business, Amazon, when they started selling advertising, most of the analysts were talking about how that money was coming not from traditional or digital advertising budgets, but from shopper marketing, in-store promotion. That was like the low-hanging fruit. I think that's changed a lot over the past few years. But was there a similar pattern for you when you were talking about who were the first advertisers and where the money was coming from? Was it the in-store guys moving dollars to digital? Was it digital dollars? Was it a variety?
Yeah, I think the reality is there's lots of different pools of money that CPGs have that are intended to influence different parts of kind of the consumer journey, if you will. There's always been brand dollars. There's always been trade dollars. There's always been shopper dollars. And newly over the last, 4 or 5 years, there's kind of e-commerce specific investment choices that folks are making. Now, the the kind of utilization of those dollars is starting to blur, right? And the reallocation of different traditional kind of pools of money is absolutely taking shape. I think that's largely driven by the recognition from advertisers around the intensity and intentional nature of how we invest a traditional TV awareness dollar relative to a more traditional conversion search dollar. The KPIs, we often talk to our advertisers about KPIs across that funnel. And if you're looking at awareness versus consideration versus conversion, we have an opportunity to create pre-optimized audiences to different KPIs, but we absolutely throughout that will hold media accountable. And it's really around brand outcomes, business outcomes. It could be around driving share. It could be around driving household penetration. It could be around driving incremental units and volume. And so, that's really the focus that we have and why these pools of money are starting to converge, and that brands ultimately are taking some steps back and thinking about where can I invest these dollars to drive the best brand outcome. And more, it's becoming retail media. Retail media can play nicely with traditional awareness investment choices that brands have, particularly when we've got pipes flowing in the right ways with some of these, major kind of publishers.
Well, to that point, do you think there's been talk that eventually this growth in retail media and its closeness to digital advertising in general is going to force some of those groups and the big brands to come together, or even no longer need to exist? The silos will break down. I don't know. There's a long history with a lot of these companies of having those divisions with different goals. Do you think that's going to start happening?
I do. In fact, we already see it starting to happen. And it is, that also, just like, retail media doesn't, happen overnight. It's in a sustainable way. Breaking down those historical behaviors, kind of and the kind of operational structures that sit underneath that, let alone the cultural dynamics across different parts of a CPG org. That also takes time, and it takes intentional messaging planning and kind of alignment to kind of common North Stars. So yes, we do see that happening. There's really mature, really mature brands and organizations that are starting to test the waters in really meaningful ways to do just that. And it's great to see. That's the future of creating a more connected, seamless advertising ecosystem for brands. Ultimately, that lands much better on a consumer. The content and kind of when they're seeing content, how they're seeing it, and how they can engage in that becomes more purposeful. And I think that's one of the real benefit stories to the consumer. As content and commerce converge, consumer expectations are different today than they were just a couple of years ago with their expectations for seamless shopping. And again, as retailers become media companies, they were always commerce practices and providers on behalf of brands. Now, as those two really start to synchronize in meaningful ways, we're seeing advertisers recognize the real power there to drive brand growth.
Right. Okay, so I want to get into some of your more sophisticated. You keep hinting at all these cool things you're doing with data and mapping customers across their journey. But starting from the top, like, who are your biggest advertisers? Simply brands who sell with you guys who are just putting out promotions? Are they trying to get new stuff discovered? Is it competitors trying to sway customers at the at the quote unquote at the register? Like, what is it? What is the biggest part of advertising business look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, today we're working with publicly. We've shared over 1,300 brands. That's a last year number for 2020, and I can tell you that that's significantly accelerated in 2021, and we'll share some public numbers in future kind of investor relations days that Kroger will carry with the investor community. But the power is there. The retention is strong. Again, year ago, 1,300 brands, 85% retention year over year, increased investment from those brands coming in. So again, you can kind of feel the momentum continue to come forward and the acceleration carry beyond that. A lot of the interest from brands is because we're driving increased effectiveness of media investment decisions. That also leads to efficiency to avoid wasted impressions, particularly in the more traditional kind of blast awareness channels.
Yeah.
So better targeting, and we talked about the longitudinal view of the shopping behavior. Overall, we're saying 3 times higher attributable return on ad spend against the average shopper because of this rich intelligence of who's the right people to expose. You get that into connection to commerce, which we talked about. That really is around product discovery, and whether that product discovery then stays just there or it moves into add to list, add to cart, or buy now type features, and then you get into meaningful measurement. And so we're really focused on enabling brand advertisers to make smarter decisions, move beyond what the industry has accepted for decades around traditional media metrics, click-through rate, CPM, purchase intent through survey data. And let's get the real. Let's understand the performance-driven measurement, sales lift, household penetration gains, share gains, et cetera. So, that as all those different pieces connect, that's really why we have so many brands leading in. And that's why we have so many brands leveraging a variety of the different assets that we have, whether it's targeted coupons, whether it's search, whether it's our relationship with Roku and kind of discovery through TV. You're seeing more shoppable moments happen in those kind of awareness placements that'll drive people into action. Okay,
so you led me to my next question, which is we keep talking about how you have this great. You have lots of different advertisers. You have a pool of logged in customers and also folks who have loyalty cards. You have relationships with these people. So you're in a great position in this moment where the cookie money, so to speak, is up for grabs, right? The targeting is going through this big change, but I would assume so many of your brands, the brands that sell in supermarkets, the knock on them, if there is one, is that they don't have first party data. They're going through a retailer. They don't know enough about their customers. So are there enough of your existing sellers that can take advantage of your first party data and targeting if they don't have a lot of data themselves? Or am I selling them short?
Yeah, well, I think they absolutely can, because most of our CPGs that are investing within our assets aren't really leveraging their first party data they have, right? There's some fracturing of first party data that consumers are willing to give brands because they need to really recognize what is that value exchange they're going to get and how many relationships can they have with different brands. How is that going to manifest itself? I mean, I don't have the latest stats kind of in my head relative to app usage, but there's a lot of apps on many people's phone, and there's pretty few apps that people use, right? So some similar kind of symmetry as we think about how many brands does a human want to have a relationship with. But they do want to have relationships with grocers or in other retail industries where they can create experiences that are meaningful and wider scale for them. So most of our CPGs, their interest often is in leveraging our multi-category longitudinal purchase-based data because it's not only indicative of behavior for that brand or for that category, but we can look at behavior across time and across an entire store, and not only just look at the absolute first-party transaction data, but also derived behavioral intelligence, likelihood to engage in innovation. There's different screens that we can do and just looking at actual behavior and data, not survey data, that can allow brands to understand, hey, is this pool of a consumer base that has XYZ attributes that are meaningful for my brand? Do they also tend to be early adopters for innovation, or are they laggards? I want to go after those early adopters. I want to expose them. You can extend into other derived data assets too about price sensitivity, flavor preferences, cross-category affinities. And that all sits within our first-party data, and that's really where a lot of brands are seeing such incredible value to tap into our assets. Some of the more mature ones want to bring their data to the table too, and obviously we can do that in some protected ways.
Okay, so what are some? How does that work if brands want to come to you with first-party data? Are you using some kind of data lake? Have you built something yourself? Like how does that look right now?
Yeah, obviously we have to keep our data in a controlled, privacy compliant, safe environment. We control that environment, and we use outside data onboarders to work those matching on the back end. But all that then stays controlled and contained.
Right. Do you have, given that everyone's hungry for first party data right now, and you have a nice pool of it, do you find brands that are outside of the Kroger universe coming to you that don't sell in your stores, but want to maybe match up with some of your targeting data and reach people in an unexpected environment, or does that not make sense?
Yeah, we have. I said, the first 4 years we were really intentional in focusing in on the core CPG, where we can deliver on our commitment to media accountability, which is what we've talked about since the beginning. And that's because of all the behavior we have in our stores with our CPGs. And we can deliver on not just the targeting aspect, right, to drive a higher performant, impression, but also measurement standards and really close the loop and understand that impact on a business outcome.
Right. You're trying to prove the business in the beginning. You don't want to want to make stuff that's going to be most provable.
Exactly. So when you get into the non-endemic space, obviously, we don't see all the flow of all those, final bits of behavior. But we have had people come to us in QSR and auto and insurance and some other places and say, hey, is there something we may be able to do and leverage some of the kind of aggregated anonymized buying practices that you have to help us work harder.
Right.
And so we're exploring those conversations. We know the demand is there. And really honestly, we want to be able to walk into that and be as confident on both ends of that pillar, right? For audience optimization recommendations, as well as the measurement standards as we are for the core.
Right.
But the demand is there. The interest is there.
Okay. How do you, this is probably a challenge for everybody, every retailer who has either that has their brick and mortar or not, that if they're getting into the advertising business more, it's fast growing. It probably feels like, wow, this has found money. Let's do more. But you don't want to screw up your primary business is still your grocer, right? Like you need to not mess up with that user experience, not overdo it. How do you find that balance where you're not shoving ads at everybody every second and making it easy to use?
I love that question, Mike. It is so important, balancing user experience and advertising on our owned and operated properties, absolutely, and of course, frequency capping off property as well, and putting those standards in, and looking at brand safety, standard expectations as well. Personalization sits at the heart of our strategy. Like we're leveraging that promise and customer intelligence in our media practices every day, because ultimately success is measured by engagement and brand outcomes. So last year, 2020 data, we served over 500 billion personalized offers and experiences to digital shoppers last year. We have features on our digital properties like Start My Cart or Did You Forget that's personalized based off of behavior we've seen those shoppers engage in, whether it's brick and mortar or in our e-commerce assets. We can kind of connect and collect all of that information. So we've got all of those appropriate signals that are fueling the personalized aspects of the site experience. Then when you overlay the business logic for advertising, that becomes a powerful overlay to drive inspiration. And so I think, it's really critical for retail media programs to get comfortable with that balance that they want to have. We've got different business logic that sits on the back end based off of loyalty to brands in different categories that we won't allow the disruption of other competitive conquesting to take shape. That's not the right customer experience. It's going to be a wasted ad dollar. It's going to frustrate our end user. And ultimately,
so you don't want competitors trying to just like bombard people and hijack their and pull them away from other partners. That's not a good experience.
So we're controlling all of that. So for folks that are incredibly loyal to a particular brand, that's a bad experience. So we can throttle that at an individual user level. And again, that's where back to your question of how easy is it to spin up? Well, if you want to have really strong practices and get those guardrails set up, that's delivering the right CX in the end. It takes time. And of course,
this can't be a dumb platform that just serves ads whenever somebody searches for something without any thought.
That's not the best user experience, which ultimately, we want to make sure that we're focused in on click to conversion ratios on our O&O. And so that factors in immensely on how we balance personalization with interest from advertisers influencing demand and discovery.
Right. Okay. Big picture, we talked about this, how retail media is just taking off. They keep upping the forecasts. Everyone's getting into it. It seems like people feel very good about 2022. I just wonder, and from where you're sitting, can this continue? When a category gets crowded like this, and then you also have like things like supply chain and inflation. Like, can this growth continue?
Yes, is the short answer to all of that. I think.
No, Mike, we're doomed.
As we pause, as you pause and reflect, I mean, media budgets are going to follow consumer behaviors, and E-commerce is still at the early stages of a long-term growth curve. So, we see the wider marketing industry really investing for the long term. Agencies, brands, publishers, ad tech providers, they're all making bets on the long-term growth of e-commerce. So that's part of a retail media ecosystem puzzle and kind of the lower funnel traditional investment choices brands have. And then the more traditional upper funnel activations, ad tech's in the center of disruption. Cookieless, you talked about privacy standards. We've talked a little bit about that's further accelerating interest in retail media because of the kind of unique connection that we have to brands and the safety standards we can deploy through all of it. So we do see this still in the very early stages of growth. And not only is it good for retailers, most importantly, it's great for advertisers and it's great for consumers, and that's the flywheel that makes this work. And that's why the targeting practice, the business logic that sits underneath it, is really critical. Because if it's a bad user experience, it's not good for advertisers, and the chain breaks.
Right.
And so we spend an exorbitant amount of time appropriately making sure that we're setting good standards and good practices into this ecosystem for our advertisers.
But I'll be a devil's advocate for a little bit. Like the nature of this, like gold rush that's happened, it's sort of, I wonder if brands really want to execute buys with like a dozen different retailers and Amazon and everybody else. It kind of screams for a roll up or a network or some kind of way that you can consolidate that.
Yeah, listen, I think retailers for brands need to have enough scale, right, to have meaningful impact on a total business, and not all retailers will and do, and that's why you do see some aggregators, coming around to create more seamless access points into their ecosystem. But there's a handful of the major retailers that absolutely can control and command and engage with advertisers directly. They have the right scale. They have good, appropriate business practices to fuel the right consumer outcomes. So
Right.
I do think that there will continue to be kind of an aggregator layer for some of the mid-tier and smaller tier retailers to support them. Otherwise, it's overly complex and overly burdensome for agencies and brands. But no doubt, the folks that do have scale, they will be able to control the engagement into their ecosystem.
Right. I want to make sure I don't forget. You mentioned a couple of partnerships that are worth exploring. Can you tell us about what you're doing with Roku?
Yeah, Roku's been a great partner, obviously, as CTV continues to grow and consumer demand within their content continues to grow. Really, the playbook is the same as the playbook for any of our off-property assets, and that's where we are kind of fueling their advertisements with the right audiences, the curated audiences, based off of different brand behavior that advertisers have interest in. They're pushing that content within their properties, and we get exposure data back, and we then measure at an aggregated basis the efficacy of that advertising. We're seeing incredible interest from brands, obviously, as CTV demand broadly grows, and the effectiveness of that media spend has been very powerful for brands. So really very similar playbook. We want to make sure when we're creating direct relationships, we're doing so based off of consumer and industry demand for some of those different placements and publishers. And so we announced that relationship about a year and a half ago, and it's been great. We think we're still in the early stages of different experiences that can happen as they continue to innovate within their platform as well.
Wait, so walk me through a hypothetical. Velveeta Shells and Cheese is running ads on Roku, and they'll buy inventory from Roku, use your data, and then track back through loyalty cards or other means, track back whether that was effective or something like that.
They'll use our audiences. We'll essentially talk to them and engage directly with Roku and Kraft Heinz in this case, and we'll look at what is the business outcome they're looking to achieve. We'll leverage our audience intelligence and create curated, pre-optimized audience kind of aggregated lists, kick that over so Roku can deploy, and then they will kick us back exposure files. And then we have the ability to measure the effectiveness of that ad relative to a synthetic control. So again, we're truly looking at what the accelerators are for our audiences relative to somebody that was unexposed.
Right. I mean, that feels like that could be a really big deal because CTV is also exploding, but attribution is kind of all over the place, especially with traditional brands when it's harder to attribute purchases and people don't shop on Roku. But do you see potential to expand that to beyond Roku and have that become a bigger part of the CTV landscape?
We do. We do. So I think, we've got a team that's constantly focused on our portfolio and publisher ecosystem and evolution there. And I think that I have no doubt that there'll be more innovation that happens within our media business in that space, as well as, staying close on the evolution that continues to take shape with data-driven linear and more traditional TV environments as well. I think, again, the technology underpinning TV is continuing to transform in meaningful ways, and appropriately brands are demanding kind of greater intelligence within those different investment choices as well. So I think the TV landscape is just, fascinating. Dynamic ad insertion as that continues to take shape, and obviously enabled through more of the kind of digitized screens through CTV. So I think advanced TV broadly is going to be a place where we continue to focus, just because the technology is accelerating more quickly in that space,
Right.
the volume of investment, and so the opportunity for brands to be more performant in that channel, which traditionally has been a pretty wide scattershot, and starting to get much more kind of zeroed in on the audience and the brand outcomes is something that's going to be powerful for about a $70 billion media industry.
You guys just need to start your own streaming service, then you'll be able to just do the full closed loop.
I know, content is king, and that would definitely necessitate some unique content.
Yeah. You also mentioned Pinterest and Pandora. Can you briefly run us through what's going on with those for those folks?
Yeah. So again, real similar playbook where it really is enabling those publisher platforms to work harder for consumers. And so there's no doubt, particularly in Pinterest, they've got incredible data signals and intent signals that are coming through their platform, and that's fantastic. And what we have a unique ability to do is to overlay actual purchase data signals on top for kind of curated audiences. A lot of those then click through into our commerce site. So again, connecting an advertisement to not just intent to buy, but moving into basket and out the door. And so we very similarly, we're pushing relevant audiences over and curating that. And then as they push that within their site, within their own signals that they use for their other advertising placements, we also look at the exposure files there to prove the efficacy of the investment. And so it's another great relationship. I think the content that Pinterest has is incredibly strong, and our intentions in the media business for all of the off-property assets is how do we make the publisher ecosystem work even harder? We see this kind of performant nature of media investment, media choices just being something that's going to continue to drive really active expectations appropriately for brand advertisers. And we think we've got a unique asset that can not only make the targeting more effective, but again, back to content and commerce starting to converge. That then is just an accelerator and drives the return on ad spend and household penetration gains, et cetera.
Very cool. A couple more for me. I'm wondering, you made me think of this, given how complex it is to run an advertising business through a retail property. You mentioned how many things you have to consider and build. It strikes me that I kept saying it should be easy. Google, you could just throw AdSense or something on your site. Why shouldn't Google have built this category or someone like that? It surprises me that one of the incumbents didn't take this and run away with it before this started.
Yeah, I think what's critical is to have that right relationship, right, with an end consumer. And when there's no doubt that folks go to Google and other kind of search properties to explore, but more and more, that exploration, you ultimately need to land the place to buy. And retailers and grocery in particular, we've got unique visibility into this behavior over time. And so to be able to curate the right relationship engagement, create a seamless, frictionless ecosystem. It's different in grocery than it is when you're buying TVs, as an example. You're going to buy a TV once every couple of years, maybe once a decade.
Kind of have to be in this business. You're right.
you're buying groceries. Many people are buying them multiple times a week.
Yeah.
And so the frequency and the signals, and then, building baskets and,
It's a lot of data.
50, 70, 100 items at a pop, not just a single item. It takes a different degree of data collection and the ability to deliver the right experience end to end, not just on fresh items, but across the entire store. And that's where I think, grocers and Kroger, as the leading grocer in the U.S., we have a unique right to win here.
Last one for me, you kind of just hinted at it. I wonder, I've heard this sentiment from other folks. You've invested so much in your advertising technology and data and what you're doing. Has that informed the way you just display products for non-advertising listings? Like, in other words, can what you've built help recreate the discovery that happens in store, that it's just like the serendipity when you're going out shopping, you notice something in an aisle? Like, can your ad technology kind of recreate that, or is that something you're aiming towards?
Yeah, so for us, it already does. Personalization science, again, fuels the general engagement within the web property, right? It's fueling what products are displayed and kind of from a PLA perspective, right, in search. Our personalization science is fueling overall visibility across each slot on the site. And like I mentioned, depending on people's loyalty in particular brands and categories, we may turn off the ability for competitive conquesting and brands to come in to try and expose themselves. That is different business choices that we make, but that personalization science is active and fueling. Back to the 500 billion personalized experiences I mentioned earlier. The intelligence we have on behavior also manifests with recommendations that go into brick and mortar as well, about category adjacencies across aisles, about what leads the aisle and what are the different placements and overall kind of breadth of different brands and sizes and flavors that sit on the shelves. It fuels different price and promotion recommendations that obviously are influencing the brick and mortar site as well, our brick and mortar experience as well as our digital sites. So there's no doubt that the customer footprint, whether it's walking through our stores, whether it's on our digital properties, is absolutely being accelerated in the right ways to create that right experience to ultimately drive add to baskets and average order value growth and repeat purchase into our properties or repeat purchase into our stores.
Right. Well, it certainly doesn't seem like it's a passing fad for you guys. It seems like the investment is pretty intense here. Awesome stuff, Cara. Thank you so much for taking time out. Great conversation, and hopefully we will keep in touch down the road.
You bet. Thanks, Mike. Appreciated the time, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. A big thanks to my guest this week, Cara Pratt, SVP of Kroger Precision Marketing, and of course, my partners at AppsFlyer. If you like this episode, please take a moment to rate and leave a review. We have lots more to bring you, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time for more on what's next in marketing.